family. God bless you all. Okay, so today I'm going to go ahead and do a video. This is probably going to be actually the last video of this series, okay? Is anything too hard for the Lord? And today, the promise that I wanted to share with you all is just God being constant in our lives. That's not the scripture, but the word constant has just been in my mind all like these past 2 weeks, just being that, you know, there's so many changes going on personally, and I know people that I've spoken with. You know, I talked about in the last video just about, you know, abrupt changes, sudden changes, and just how awesome the Lord is in all of this, in all of our circumstances. And the word constant, right? Because it kept coming in my head, and I wanted to read just from the dictionary, just really quickly, what constant means, okay? And I was having a conversation last week sometime with a sister of mine, and we just kind of came to the conclusion that, you know, despite all the changes in our life, how beautiful that God's love is constant, that our circumstances may change, but God never changes. His love never changes for us. And so just really quick, the definition of constant is continually occurring or recurring, which persistent. Another one here is steadfast in purpose, loyalty or affection, faithful, something unchanging or invariable. And, you know, that's what every time I would think of the word constant, it was that just unchanging, God's love being constant in our lives. And I wanted to read, and it's actually one of my husband's favorite scriptures. It's a favorite like piece of scriptures, and it's in Ecclesiastes. And I think there's even a song from some 70s band or something. It's in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 through 8 is actually some scriptures, but then I'm going to go ahead and read verses 9 through half of 14, okay? And Ecclesiastes is in the Old Testament, okay? And it says here, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Then Solomon goes on to verse 9. He says here, what do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. And so, you know, despite all the changes that are happening, whether it be with your coworkers, with your friends, with your family members, with yourself, God endures forever. God's purpose will endure forever. And so what I also wanted to do is read another scripture that just kind of confirms that God is constant in all things. Now, in the Old Testament again, in Numbers chapter 23, verse 19, it says here, God is not human that he should lie, not a human being, that he should change his mind? Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? And so, yes, as I remember the first time I read this scripture, I thought, well, God has changed his mind, I think, just like with the Israelites, he was so angry with them, but then he forgave them. And so sometimes I think God's mercy and love can appear as if though he's changing his mind. But when I sat and really thought about it, his promises, he will never lie about them. He will never change his mind when it comes to fulfilling the promises that he has for each and every one of us. And it says here, does he promise and not fulfill? Exactly. He promises and he fulfills. Despite any change that is happening in our lives, God's promises still stand. There's a scripture and that I wanted to share with a sister of mine. So if she's hearing, I love you. And even in those shakable moments, standing on God, we are unshakable. I know there's a scripture, and I've read it before, where he says, God will one day shake the heavens and the earth, and those things that are unshakable will remain, and they will stand strong in the Lord. And so another scripture, I'm sorry, there's several that I want to share tonight, is actually where Jesus, it's in Hebrews, the New Testament, chapter 13, verse 8. And here it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so that's another promise, another sense of comfort for each and every one of us, that, Jesus, God's Son, he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and will always be. Just, he is our God in the flesh, that Trinity. And if God is unchanging, Jesus will be unchanging as well. And one more scripture that I did want to read is in Psalms 118, verse 8. And I think this scripture here is for, some of us, I think, that have difficulty just trusting others. Changes can happen so quickly, and it's sometimes scary to trust other people. But, the Lord knows our circumstances. And in Psalm 118:8, Old Testament, he says here, David says, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans." And just to know that trusting in God is going to be our best way, because he is unchanging. We can be in the midst of chaos, in a storm, and God is that rock. We are unshakable if we stand on that foundation, which is God. And just hope that this brings a sense of comfort and peace, knowing that regardless of our changing lives, that God is constant. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And his love endures forever, and he will always love us. And his promises will always be there for us to receive. So, okay, thank you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening.